This is our network build panel session. We've got some amazing industry leaders who we'll introduce in a minute. But to start with, I just want to go over the breakdown of the session, how it's going to work. So I've got a few structured questions for the guys, but then after that, again, similar to the previous session, it'd be great to get some Q&A going. So there'll be kind of 20, 30 minutes of questions our side, and then we'll have some mics in the room. And it'd be great if you could get some questions over to our leaders here based on the content that we talked through. So first of all, love to introduce, I'll let these guys introduce themselves, but if I could just ask you to introduce yourself, your company, your business, and one priority for yourself for the year, that would be amazing.
Business priority or me, personally?
Either way, I don't mind.
So my name is Rob Baines, currently at Hyperoptic in London, and the priority for the business is pretty straightforward. We've got a big digital transformation going on this year.
Cool, thank you.
Hi everyone, Phil Haslam. I'm the CTO at TalkTalk. I've been there 20 years, various different roles. My priority for this year, other than demerging businesses, which is a bit of a high-profile thing that we've got to get through, is actually about our sort of aggregation platform and how we start to bring together, the lots of altnets and last-mile providers really onto our great platform.
Cool, thank you, Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Colum from All Points Fibre. We're funded by Octopus. I'm Chief Network Officer, and my job is to build wholesale open access network to bring together 3 organisations and consolidate them to the target operating environment and build a new national disruptor ISP, which is cuckoo. So
that's one priority.
That's it. And I need to get a new motorbike.
New motorbike? Which one?
Yeah. Hey, hello everyone. Jeannie York, Chief Technology Officer for Virgin Media O2. So I have the honors of building both the fixed and the mobile network products and services across the UK.
Cool, thank you. First question, I'll start with you, Rob, if that's okay. So from your business perspective, so when you're designing your network, what are the key things that you are thinking about in terms of network design, which means that the network is there to fulfill your kind of particular USP as a business?
I'm glad you asked that. So Hyperoptic, I don't know if anyone knows, but if everyone knows, but I've only been there a few months, but they're known as the MDU specialists, right? That's where they built the business. It's all been MDUs. So I think I'm right in saying it has a unique kind of build, a plan, because of the nature of the beast there. So I have almost no kind of deep kind of challenge in the core and aggregation stuff, but for the way we are, it's all about that last connection to the building, right? So that's where we have all our challenges in getting the right amount of capacity to quite a lot of buildings, and it's fair to say, careful what I say now, it's fair to say that Hyperoptic did a really good job of that in London, I think, because it's quite easy, because things are quite close together, and then I think they have newly embarked on kind of genuine PON fibre build outside of London, and I think they found that more challenging, and that's partly why they brought people like me in, because I have got a background in that from the likes of CityFibre and Giganet. So what's the design challenges? Yeah, so it's all the interesting and exciting stuff is happening at the access layer, basically.
Cool. Phil, same for you?
I think from our point of view, since we don't build into the last mile, what a lot of our business model is about the aggregation of that, and obviously then providing end-to-end connectivity for, whether it be consumers or transport services for a lot of our partners, then a key design challenge and a thing for us is ensuring that we've got a standardization across the different last mile builds. That can be all the way from in the future. I reckon we'll end up in situations where we want to be, interoperability between ONTs in the home, etc. We're miles off that right now, but just in terms of standards and integration standards and fault definitions, etc. So there's a lot about what we're thinking is to try and make sure there's commonality of that, so it just provides a seamless service for for customers and partners, really.
Cool, thank you. Steve, you seem to have a bit of a challenge with all of these things coming together. So what about yourself?
Well, it is interesting because, of course, one of the things that we have to do to build a national network, we're not going to have our own fibre everywhere. So we've got to work with other cell-side operators, very similar to what Phil's just saying with TalkTalk, but also to bring together our own previously discrete investments into one, so we have a consistent customer network entry approach and service capability. So subsequent challenge there, different speeds, different capabilities, different API maturity, different service assurance, and how are we going to solve some of those particular problems, as well as what's the bandwidth going to be in the future and all the different changes that are going on right under our feet while we're trying to drive that maturity into what previously was relatively immature AltNet as we're bringing that together to start behaving like a carrier now.
And Jeannie for VMO2?
Yeah, I think the big thing for us is obviously it's scale, right? Scale and resiliency at the right economics, and that's kind of a bit of the challenge. Where on the fixed side, economics very different than on the mobile, but essentially you're trying to innovate, use the right technology that gets you 10, 15, 20 years of life out of it. And because we're kind of building for three segments, we've got a wholesale segment, a B2B segment, a consumer segment, that the rationalization of what you need to do for each of those is quite different. So as you mentioned, standardization, scale, economics, and resilient is big, especially as many of you know, Ofcom has continued to put a lot of pressure on the industry around resilience. And at the end of the day, that's one of the most important things for the customer, right? So that you have up all the time and fast and future-proof, really, for that.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Phil, if I can come to you on this one. So could you please reflect on probably your most or the industry's most significant changes or advancements in network technology over the past 2 decades?
I love that question. I was thinking, blimey, that's a question, isn't it? I started to think about it from the point of view of things like, as a kid, and then I realised I was way older than that, so they didn't fit into your 20-year category. It's possibly slightly biased, but I personally think the optical advances that we continue to see underpin all of the demand for bandwidth that we see, whether it's on the fixed side, obviously where I work, or ultimately backhaul and off radio networks in mobile. So advances in optical technology, I think, have unlocked all the way from FTTP to the home and gigabit technology when the applications drive it, all the way all of that is served through optical end-to-end through the network. So I think the way that's become ubiquitous end-to-end in the connectivity versus the eventual reduction of copper is, I think, to me, the game changer, really.
Yeah, perfect. And then Steve, same question. What about you? Last 2 decades?
I think if you just rewind very slightly before that,
Okay.
so mass adoption of on-demand access technology back in dial-up days, all these things, started to see scaling issues that you start to predict. And then as that transitions into fixed line and the bandwidth starts to drive more and more and more, heavy adoption of mobile. And I mean, you think, even rewind back, when a phone first came with a camera, it's like, that's pointless. What on earth is that for? And now my mum will send me a 4K video that just arrives wherever you are, whether you're on Wi-Fi or whether you're on mobile. So because we're thinking about all these different types of things, how do you continue scaling that? I know that hopefully we'll touch on some things a bit later that maybe talk about how that bandwidth will drive or latency or different user experience. And that's kind of where we're thinking.
Yeah, if you think about the optics, though, it's for those of us who've probably been around a couple of decades, 2 or 3 decades. I remember when I was building out fiber optic networks across the U.S., we were putting in OC192 capacity, which was literally half of a refrigerator size of equipment with cards, great big huge cards, and now I think it's what optics in general have probably evolved as much as anything in terms of 400 gigabit pluggables now that literally look like a USB drive. I mean, it's really impressive what the innovation and the technology has done in that space, and it's had to by force to accommodate the sheer capacity and scale of the internet across the globe. So I think that's huge. But I think we're about ready to hit probably something far more disruptive in terms of AI.
Yeah.
When you kind of look at the internet being the disruptor 20 years ago in terms of changing the global economy, connectivity, etc., AI is going to take it to a very, very different level in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. Rob, coming back to you again. So are there any specific mistakes or setbacks that you've seen in the past that have kind of provided some insight to maybe how to do things differently?
Personally, None. Never made a mistake.
Never. All right, good.
I can't even think.
Doesn't have to be your own mistake.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I was just joking with you earlier about there's two that spring to mind, really big ones. Obviously, one was ultimately a choice of technology,
Yep.
maybe a technology partner, our Chinese friends, and I think a lot of companies there learned the hard way, having to rip out equipment that was actually pretty new and certainly well within its life, and that's quite hard to do from a capex point of view, but also from an operational point of view, the impact of replacing all that kit. So, obviously pick your vendors, and then the other one possibly again technology is the awkward the coax versus fibre. Back in the day, looked like a great idea, but now I suspect there's quite a few billion reasons to regret the amount of money that was rolled out into DOCSIS and coax for
Any thoughts?
Virgin.
Well, we love DOCSIS. It's good stuff. Talk about getting life out of your plant. DOCSIS is
Sweated that
perfect for
asset,
that. Yeah. No, I think, lessons learned. I think, and we were talking about this a little bit, I think it's really hard to leapfrog technology and the ways of working and the mindset. When you think about trying to build network as a service, for instance, which is one of the big transitions that we're looking at doing, we have a tendency, and I think it's a natural part of humans, we have a tendency to always frame of reference how we've done it before, and then try to shoehorn in that solution into what we know. And you get 2 or 3 years down the road of that decision, and it becomes very apparent that you've done it again. Yeah. You thought you could actually innovate around it, and you end up really being kind of stuck with a lot of really suboptimal solutions, whether that's at the application layer or at the core level. But I think that's one of the challenges that we still face is how do you actually get kind of break away from what you consistently know to fundamentally do it differently. Yep. And have enough diversity of innovation and thought to do that. That's what I've seen consistently. Almost every major tech turn, whether it's a gigabit speed or MPLS from ATM frame, we always kind of start with the frame of reference of how we did it before, and then try to engineer into it. And I find that almost always you need to start greenfield and work backwards, right? Yeah.
I think it's quite an interesting point, because if you go back to first principles, for network entry today in an ISP environment, we're using Radius that was built in 1991, using DHCP that was built in 1993. In some cases, we're doing PPP encapsulation, all the nightmare that's associated with that. Why are we doing that 30 years on? Why haven't we got heavy adoption of white box technology with message bus and all these different types of technology that we can do some quite innovative things in them?
Yeah.
But if you think about that in the same way, I think ATM is predominantly dead. There's probably still some ATM running somewhere. But then MPLS came along, and we've had that 20 odd years. Now segment MPLS is here, and we can do some cool path compute stuff and whatever, fix some things. But meanwhile, hyperscalers have been driving white box tech to do leaf spine to drive incredible bandwidths in metro campus environments. That'd be quite nice if that was a national network fabric. There's some smart things that are yet to be done, and we need to start leading the way on this stuff.
Cool. And I think we'll probably get to it later in terms of the kind of emerging technologies, but yeah, absolutely. So I think your particular challenge of bringing some business together, I'll start with you if that's okay for this next question. So where we're deploying new backhaul for 5G, we are replacing DOCSIS perhaps with fiber, we are pulling networks together. How do we as businesses make sure that from an assurance and care point of view, our customers get the right experience? At the point about resilience earlier, how do we make sure that the customer experience doesn't get interrupted by how much change is now necessary and how quickly it's needed?
Okay, interesting question. Gone are the days of Netcall running on a sunbox sat in the corner. I think that's dusty now, and it's probably turned off hopefully everywhere. Need to change the thought process on how, let's just pick monitoring for a minute. Service assurance, alarm, event management, capacity management, all the different things involved with that ecosystem. How do you take different data exhaust feeds out of different systems and then correlate them, line it up with some AI, and perhaps we call it machine learning, and then it moves to AI. But correlate those different things. I mean, we heard earlier, I think there was some issues with flooding on transport down in Cornwall. If we analyse what's going on in the network, we could probably pick that up before any sell-side networks even informed us, and it would be regional enough information to know what's going on. And then all you need is to say, this has happened, this is what we're doing about it. Not quite sure how you communicate with them at this point, but let's just go with it. It needs a fresh approach to these things.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you do it at scale? And how do you share and collaborate that? So think again, as a sell-side network of the future, if I'm consuming Virgin, I don't know, let's just say it's FTTP product, how do I get some of your data exhaust and telemetry that's separated and secured into my own system so that we can leverage it in the same way? That's one less call to you, and it's one less call to everybody. And it needs a modern approach to the architecture and thinking to do these things.
I agree with that in terms of the scale point, but I think the joined up data points is a really good one, which is the end-to-end network, which is essentially what, with the customer on the end of it, is joining some of those bits of information and data together. We've done various proofs of concept of that. It's brilliant, but getting the scale bit's the hard bit, and we're still trying. But you're absolutely right. If you can join all that data together, you've got easily sort of the best early warnings, proactive monitoring, and you can do something with it. Before a customer's even noticed. Ideally, it's a great point.
So I've seen that in your NOC with the use of like radius sessions dropping out to Splunk, I think, is one of those kind of things, to come up and say, actually, there must be something going on there because we've had all these dropouts at the same time. And even though the network is not alarming and the network is not telling you anything, you're effectively, the customer experience that they're dropping out is telling you something, and getting that data. And the joke that you guys made was, you tell OpenReach they've got a problem before they know anything about it.
But it's just, you're absolutely right, and it's just how do you then make that the norm and scale it across all the different parts of the network? It's a challenge.
I think you have to start, though. I think that it's a very overwhelming problem when you look at it from an end-to-end perspective, and it's kind of taking segments, get the data consolidated. I mean, we've done a big piece of work with GCP. Obviously, it's kind of our next generation data platform because it can scale. And then you can start taking customer segment data, you can take network data, you can take telemetry data, and start drawing, that base data, make those relationships, get to the point where some of it you can be predictive, but it's a long journey, and you have to be very prescriptive about what you're going to choose in terms of use cases, because you get buried in the telemetry of a mobile network. It is billions of sessions of data an hour, right? So you can't scale that into a data correlation event, etc. So I think that what we've tried to do is really just kind of take a pragmatic approach to that, where you can, and find the way that you can drive the best use case for value. Right, and predictive is one of the big ones for us, trying to correlate that customer experience as well, so that we can actually see your CPE's gone down 4 times in the last 7 weeks. You're probably going to fail within 15 days. Let's go do a proactive replacement on the kit.
Yeah, cool. So, thank you for that. So, one question, and it's kind of a little bit follows from what Lutz was saying earlier about consolidation to 2.5 fixed providers in the future. So are there any considerations that we need to make or may need to make into the future whereby we're deploying a network which has such a spectrum of different requirements in terms of someone working at their home to also supplying services for a hyperscaler all on the same network? Is there anything that we need to think of today or will need to think of in the future in terms of network design to support that? Jeannie, if I could start with you.
Yeah, I think if you start at the upper end of that scale with hyperscalers, right? They're dealing with capacity and data at numbers you really hardly can digest, right? So it's about the densification of that infrastructure in key strategic locations where you can scale out connectivity and connectivity, hyper resilient connectivity to them, right? And so I think for us, it's a big piece of that. And then you scale back further distribution into the network, right? I think it's a two-sided issue though. One is hyperscalers have got, and you're seeing it already right now in the market, where they've got a very big problem to solve with how they aggregate and move the types of petabytes that they're dealing with, regularly. Their architecture is quite sensitive to a number of design parameters that you got to build a network for. But it always kind of comes back to the basic principles, right? Which is the resiliency and the scale at the optical and IP connectivity level, and then the distribution of that across, a region, a network the size of the UK is tough to scale because it's such a huge geographical challenge, and the majority of the content distribution and access comes in and out of places like London. So it's just assuring that you actually have that built with belts and braces and tech on the other side of it in terms of resiliency and recovery when you do have an interruption.
Cool. And I get Steve, keen to hear your thoughts. On top of that, do you also think it's feasible for a telco to be able to build that hyper-resilient, hyper-scaled network and also hit the density and build out targets that kind of required to support economies of scale to get it through?
So, a network is an implementation of a finance risk model. So that's not necessarily something that you're going to build everywhere. It may be focused in a geographic location to go and do something. But back to the hyperscaler comment. So our focus at the minute, so clearly there's going to be business and one or two things, but it's how do we get a consumer eyeball ISP fully operational there, which is about how do you manage that backhaul, the mid-haul, the OPEX involved with that, the constraints for the fact it's not readily available in certain geographic regions, so fine, you might be able to pick it up in a telephone exchange, but not all of them. How are you going to get that there? How do you then get the content into that location where the content's constantly moving around? It's like, oh, hi, hyperscalers, here's a content cache service that you've got to use. So there's this big trade-off anyway, because we're operating in a tiny few pounds because the price point is set. And yet the content providers have got a large share. I think there's probably going to be some consolidation there of that revenue. But if you go to first principles, last Call of Duty, 100 gig or whatever it is for an update, right? On a 100 meg connection, that's whatever, 2 hours something. You put that on a 1 gig connection, that's 2 minutes. But in 5 years' time, it's going to be 1 terabyte. You've got the same problem. So it's it's a thing that we just have to live with. How do you get that content out there? Turn it completely around on its head. If you order a change in your utility provider, they don't rock up and drill a new cable into your house and dig up your drive, well, hopefully not, and put a new utility meter in. Why isn't the CPU of the future multi-tenanted? And it probably has a follow me capability. I can come and visit you and the network auths me and it knows that I'm there and my network's there. It's not yours, it's not TalkTalk, it's not anything, it's the services follow me. Yeah. So I think there's still some changes that's got to be done. You get that there, and why isn't the cache built into that CPU environment? Yeah. It knows what you're going to do.
Yeah. That 100 gig Call of Duty download is pertinent based on this next question. I did see that in the news actually. So it wasn't one of our peak days of the year, I think, on the release of that.
It always is.
Yeah.
That and live Amazon traffic. Yeah. When they stream football games, highest usage of the network.
Yeah.
Historically, it breaks it every single time we do it.
Yeah.
In terms of volume.
So
football. Not a big fan. Unlike Lutz, he is a big fan, but I'm not. Like rugby.
I'd like to ask all of you this question. Rob, I'll start with you if that's okay. So we've got a session on emerging technologies later, but I just want to get your thoughts now. So what current kind of emerging technology is currently influencing decisions? We've heard about AI, we've heard about other things, and I even read the other day about an LG smart dishwasher or washing machine sending almost 4 gig of traffic a day.
Yeah.
So emerging tech, which one is influencing your decisions?
So I mean, unfortunately, we already talked about it, but it's the AI, the use of AI, and this is back to our, if you remember, the beginning, talking about this year was a big year of digital transformation. because you can't just, certainly, smaller company, Hyperoptic, you can't just kind of suddenly plug in Chat GPT to your kind of legacy CRM. You have to kind of build it in carefully. And this year is really about getting the foundational system refresh done to then be able to take the AI. And the expectation is that it will be transformational for the customer experience, certainly. But and you talked about big data and using that data to proactively prevent issues, i.e. things that look like they're a bit dodgy. Like I know Steve's got some optical OTDR head-end things in the network as well, using that stuff. I know BT have got them, using that not just to alert when it's down, but to say, look, this is a degrading service. It's getting closer to the point it's going to fail. Let's go and fix that before anybody notices. But to do all that kind of stuff, you need a kind of hygiene of systems that can actually take it. And that's what we're doing at the moment. And that's all ultimately, if you kind of play it through, it's all driving to deploy AI.
Bill, for you?
Very similar, really. I think it's the opportunity is just amazing. I do agree with Jeannie. It's it's going to be the next sort of potentially industrial revolution for us, isn't it? If we get it right, there's loads of hype. Trying to turn that into practical use cases is where we're sort of where our thoughts are. But what we've done, just as sort of practical examples, is to develop some of our own sort of large language models to help speed the competency of engineers. So, an integrated AI-assisted sort of wiki, if you like. Yeah. So that's started to just really prove some value and bring knowledge to to the frontline engineers. So speed of issue resolution is better. And over the longer term, then we just have more breadth of experience. Other example being we touched on it already, but anomaly detection. So wading through all of that data, all those logs, and really trying to just use the technology to spot the anomalies quicker, smarter. Right now, what we've done is to develop that into effectively a bot that puts that information into a Teams chat for our engineers, and then but progressively doing various capabilities, whether it be recommendations based on what it's learned previously, and ultimately I guess doing some sort of proactive resolution. But we're some way off that, but the potential's massive. But similar to Rob, it's that to me the AI capability that exists and the potential is what we're looking at to try and harness, really.
Cool. Steve, yourself?
So similar to that, it's about machine learning and anomaly detection. How are you going to do all these different things? So back to your example there about the LG washing machine going a bit crazy. There's a post recently, anybody that follows FastNetMon or anything like that, about challenges with IoT connected devices that had issues with them 4 or 5 years ago. The vendor has no incentive model to fix these things. The problem is manifested more and more. I mean, I'm a bit geeky. I have quite a lot of IoT smart lights and things like that in the house. I think it's brilliant. My wife thinks it's a nightmare, but it's just a trade-off. But if you look at where it's made, if it goes wrong, these are huge amounts of very fast connected bots that are waiting to cause no end of trouble. I think gone are the days of having, 20,000 Zyxel unpatched routers doing something really bad. This is much more beyond that now. It's into fridges and it's into all sorts of things that's going to be a problem in the future. How do we get ahead of that? And then you look at the whole bandwidth demand in general anyway. I mean, we touched on the gaming earlier. You've accepted now that you don't own media for film, audio. Same's going to happen with gaming. They're talking about that. And then you stick 360 interactive, non-cacheable video gaming onto all that. What's your network got to do for the future to be able to do these things to provide an exceptional user experience at the same time? You don't want a bit of lag in the middle of this stuff. It's got to be good. And with the transition to fibre, we get to reboot our whole approach on a lot of things. We can build literally a no latency network in the UK. You haven't got 17 milliseconds. You can do so many different things, and that will evolve. That will drive the innovation to be able to do new set of stuff. And our job is to try and preempt what are those things going to be, and then do something to prepare for it at scale.
Yeah, cool, perfect. Jeannie, for you?
I probably would only add maybe one other thing, and it's really kind of the real evolution of softwareization, if that's even a word, but the drive to take all the physical software, the physical hardware and software that we used to buy, and vendors don't like to hear this when we talk about it, but really removing that 100% and evolving to pure cloud-based solutions. And we've been talking about that for a long time. I think it really is coming in where when I look at the mobile core, we have cloudified almost all of the core infrastructure. The same with the IP. Optical is getting more converged and more software-based. We're on the precipice of some very big scaled software evolution there, which also means we have a pretty significant challenge with our people too, right? I mean, somebody asked what's about the diversity in the room, and it's not only gender diversity and diversity in general. We're taking very big, what would have been very big monolithic networks, and we're turning them into software development camps. And for those of us who've been, growing and evolving that tech 20 or 30 years, it's a big shift to really, truly be a cloud-first organization, skill set base, and actually do that evolution. And it starts with baby steps, right? I mean, we did our first telco cloud environment. It was just a colossal disaster. Thought we built it right, picked the right partners. Always first prototype always looks fantastic on the architecture slides or marketecture slides. And then you get into the real complexities of taking network OSS systems and back office systems and all that stuff that makes it really hard. And then popping it into a cloud environment that's completely not GUI, UI, orientation. So I think that that'll be a huge evolution for us. Another one with, the icing on the cake being, what do you then do with that with AI and other language models, right?
Thank you. Not a question I've got written down, but just thought Steve, you said take it home. Are you going to be buying one of these Apple Vision Pro?
No.
I'm yet to meet someone who's going to buy. Is anyone planning on buying one? No, not. They look really cool. The goggle things. Have you seen them? The VR things. No.
They've got to move the tech forward,
Yeah.
right?
The Google Glass thing.
And it needs to be even more James Bondy than that.
Yeah.
Like way more cool than glasses.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Somehow, I'm not sure. It's like maybe a little eye, like a little contact insert that you do into your eye. That'd be more effective.
I think Elon's going to do that, isn't he? With
all of his satellites.
Good. We've got a few minutes left for some questions. It'd be great to get some questions from the audience, from our panel. Again, we've got a couple of mics in the room. So do we have any questions in the room?
We scared them all.
Mm-hmm. There's one.
Hello, it's Bjorn. Thank you for allow me to ask a question. With the increasing speeds on the fiber network, how are you tailoring the endpoints? Because when we have things like edge computing or the last mile where we're somebody out in the field in the sticks, if we have 100 gig on a fiber, what do we do with the devices to bridge the speed to the end devices?
Well, I'm trying to make sure I understand the question in terms of the last mile connectivity.
Yeah, the last mile connectivity, and obviously we have routers maybe where fiber terminates, but what do we then do with the last mile to end devices if we have IoT edge computing or things like that?
Yeah, well, and I think distributed cache. There's a lot of things that we're looking at in terms of how, whether that's small cell leveraging capability between mobile and fixed. We're trying to spread into both of those, right? Where we can take the technology further and deeper out to the edge without having to have the physical network architecture. So that's a big piece of it for us. Plus leveraging the other part of our estate. We've got 22,000 towers across the country from a mobile perspective. It's a great asset that you can share with the right tech hanging off of the end of it for kind of deeper edge computing capability.
Okay, thank you.
Relatively new. I mean, we're not fully implementing full solutions at that, but we're in trials. And of course, small cells are for sure out there where we're using them right now today, especially in real high dense population areas, right?
Thank you.
Do we have another question over here?
Hi there. Yeah, so in the UK, there's some areas where there's 4 or 5 different fibre providers in one location. With your network builds, how are you avoiding that? How are you differentiating yourself? And with the future consolidation, like how will that actually all come together?
You want to say that?
I've got an easy answer, which is I just aggregate them and then let them decide which one who's
Yeah.
going to win.
You got the
Well,
best
that's
solution.
probably but that doesn't really answer your question. But so
Maybe Steve or Rob?
So I think if we look at what Fern Octopus have done, although it's sizable, it's a relatively small footprint that we have done. And to hit our national ambition, clearly we're not going to overbuild everybody else that's out there. We'll be bankrupt along that journey. This is about aligning with a strategic partnership to do that. And I think along the next few years, there will be rationalisation and things will change and all sorts of different stuff will be going on. But also it's an opportunity to provide some unique selling point, a differentiated capability, especially networks that aren't GPON constrained. How are we going to drive things forwards? How are we going to deliver other services? And perhaps some thought innovation about what comes beyond that. For me, I don't think it's 25 gig and 50 gig and whatever PON, kind of wavelengths on demand to do smart stuff in certain geographic regions. What is that going to look like? I think it needs a few people to get together and start to drive some, I don't know, call it skunk works or whatever you want to do, but to do a project to prove something and define a new blueprint and thought process about how to move it forwards.
Rob, do you have any thoughts as well?
Yeah, so I was one of the founding team of GigaNet, and we did a lot of work then around where to build, which some of it has changed since then because of other overbuild going in there first. I'm quite new to hyperoptic. One of the things that struck me and I really like about the company is that everything is business case driven. So at the moment, hyperoptic are still building. We did 300,000. They did 300,000 last year. They're doing 300,000 build this year, which is quite a lot, for a small company. And they're doing that in places where ultimately the only other person they will overbuild will be Openreach. They won't build if another altnet is building there, and we're focusing on MDUs, and a big part of their future build is new build. So it's new houses, which is a thing that Openreach do. And in fact, I bumped into a couple of people that have 2 ONTs in their house, an Openreach one and a hyperoptic one. So that's their strategy. So they're going new houses so that no one else is there. And I think that's probably building on the legacy of, again, hyperoptic being a wayleave specialist as well. So they almost, one of the metrics they report is wayleaves. Before homes passed, is how many wayleaves have we got granted and how many premises is that, and they've got a really healthy pipeline of wayleaves for new build and MDU as well.
Yeah. It really is all about the economics, right? I mean,
Yeah.
especially now, there's over 100 altnets in this country, right? Depending on how you count the flavors, the size, the scale across the region. And once you have 2 or 3 or 4 in some cases, which we do a lot of economic modeling on, we have tools that we use that help us build, the best approach to being able to get to the good old 40% penetration rate, right? That is becoming more and more challenging, and that's exactly what Litz was talking about this morning. Is that we're facing into places where there's 3 or 4 providers in the same neighborhood trying to provide service, and the danger in that is the price rise, or not price rise, but the cost to drive to the bottom, right? In competitive pricing, where you completely destroy the market, and we see that happening in certain areas already. So we do a lot of work on the economics, the time to get there, and then how do you differentiate the value proposition back into the customer at the end of the day, right? We're lucky enough that we have 3 or 4 tools in the bag to do that. But it is definitely getting more challenging. And of course, we've got a partnership with Nexfiber, which we're building on their behalf so that they can get out to the market fast as well. But I think that some of that's going to start colliding for sure, right? Just because the market can't bear the sheer diversity.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for the question. We probably have time for one last question. You fight over between yourselves. I saw 2 hands there. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe 2 if we're quick.
I guess probably a question for Jeannie and Phil. Altnets have the luxury of starting with a blank sheet of paper. You both come from organizations that have been around for some time. How do you manage that tech debt, especially with the pace of innovation? I mean, the technologies that both of you, or all of you've mentioned, are arriving a lot quicker than previously. We were introducing technology and new technology changes. So how do you manage that, the tech debt?
That's a great question. It's tough. It's from my perspective, the usual questions are, why does it have to take so long? Why can't we just get this out, etc., etc.? And it's like, so I guess part of it is about actually the narrative that goes into the business. So tech debt is, tech term, boring, legacy, blah, blah, nobody's really interested. So one of the things that I think we work hard at is trying to make sure that the business really understand what we mean by that and what we're trying to do about it, because it's obviously a technology problem to evolve it, but where we need business support on, products that are going to be in particular markets or on particular, on new stacks, not every stack or things like that. So trying to get a common approach to the evolution of our system stacks or our network by virtue of everybody buying into it is one piece, I think. So in other words, it's a business problem, not just a tech problem to have to deal with it all. I think the other element that we try hard on is really trying to make sure that we are, keeping the product set simple. So some of the older system stacks that we might have don't have to handle all of that complexity because we've got more simplicity in the product offering, which means we can still build that capability. The one big thing that's helped, I would say, in recent years is the security agenda and the security posture of organizations really helps you dial up the fact that we have to face into this legacy, and it gets more support in terms of investment and moving it forward and that sort of stuff. But there's no, from my perspective anyway, there's no really easy answer about the fact that we just do that and it's gone. We were just laughing about Pipex from 20 years ago, which I've still got some system somewhere that I've got to deal with, etc. from previous acquisitions. Steve's fault. Yeah. But so it's an ongoing challenge. We just but being clear about trying to ensure that's a collective problem to solve as an organization.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we did a piece of work about 1.5 years ago to really look at the deep evolution of how do you really cloudify, how do you fully converge where you can, and when you look at your back office systems, right, to run these scaled networks, super complex. But we started doing kind of micro pieces of work to look at the cost of that, and it's not just the cost to carry the legacy tech debt, but it's also the value that you're bringing in with that customer base at the same time. And we discovered a lot of really interesting things in that piece of work. So I think if you can kind of back up a little bit and look at how you financially represent that debt, because there are a number of empirical ways that shows up in your P&L, but it also shows up in your ability to be innovative. It shows up in how you work, which is also very, very can oftentimes be very constraining to speed to market. We did that piece of work, and you you literally chip away at the iceberg. And it was one of the most difficult conversations I had with Lutz, because he's like, well, why can't you just fix that in 3 years? Like, why does it have to be a long game? Well, big networks, scaled networks are a long game. Yeah. and places in wholesale segments or B2B segments, we can get a little bit faster at turning that tech more effectively. But you also have to show how inefficient or how cost unattractive it is actually to serve that customer base. And that's where I've found more benefit is in the cost to serve, and trying to drive the P&L owner to actually own it on the commercial side. This is no longer a technology problem, it's a business problem, and it's now your business problem to financially solve. And it's like literally turning it on its head, because I jokingly say, we used to go around as CTOs with our begging bowls, like, I just need 20 million to do the life cycle on the plant, and you'd beg and you didn't get anything in your bowl. And you really kind of have to flip it around commercially. And that, with the B2B colleagues, it's a challenge, but you start strategically moving the right stuff in the right direction.
Brilliant. Thank you. We're going to have all our colleagues rejoin us, so unfortunately that's all the time we have for questions, but can I please get a warm thank you for our panel guests. Thanks so much.